Voting Theory Class 2 Video 2. In this video we're going to talk about voter profiles. So let's begin with the definition. So a voter profile is a listing of all the possible voter preferences together with the number of voters who voted for those preferences. Okay? So a voter profile tells you essentially like how everyone voted during the election. Okay? A voter profile tells you how everyone voted during the election. One thing to note is there's a lot of different ways of voting, and if 0 people vote for in one particular way, then you tend to omit it from the voter profile. So when 0 voters vote for a particular voter preference, for a particular preference, we sometimes omit it. From the voting profile. From the voter profile. This is just to save space and make writing it down a bit easier. So let's just quickly look at an example. In the highway referendum, this is a perfectly good voter profile. Okay, it tells you exactly how everyone voted. It tells you exactly how 28 voters voted for this preference, 9 voters voted for this preference, and so on and so on and so on. If I wanted, it would be perfectly okay for me to just delete this column because 0 people voted for it. Okay, and it's understood that if I omit a column, that means 0 people voted for it. So this here is a voter profile. You should think about a voter profile, it's like the raw information which you're given, and the voting system then determines the outcome of the election. So this is a voting profile, and then the role of a voting system is to take this information and then determine who the winner is and who came second and third and so on and so on. So let's look at another example quickly. Okay, this here is another voting profile. Okay, or voter profile. I use these words interchangeably. Okay, it's a complete list of how the voters voted. So 4 people voted like this. 17 people voted like this. And recall, this here, what does this mean? This means that C is better than A, is better than E, is better than B, is better than D. That's what this notation means. Okay? Notice that I omitted a lot of different possible preferences. For example, I didn't include something that looked like B, A, C, D, E. And it's understood that since this particular preference isn't included, they got 0 votes. And the reason you do this is if you were to list every single possible preference, well, for 5 alternatives, there's 5 factorial, and that's 120 different possible preferences. And there's just not enough room on the page to list 120 different possible alternatives. So if they're not listed, it's assumed they got 0 votes. Okay? So that's what a voter profile is. So now let's talk about voters themselves. So in order to properly mathematically analyze the properties of different voting systems, we need to make some assumptions on the voters themselves. Okay? We need our voters to act somewhat rationally. So let's talk about this abstract definition. We say that a relation is, and it's got many parts. So a relation is called complete if for any 2 alternatives either A is better than B or B is better than A, or both. Okay, and if both, then we write A squiggle B. Okay, so it means A squiggle B means like they're sort of on equal footing. They're on the same level of preference or whatever. We say that the relation is strict if whenever you have two alternatives which are not equal, then you can't have both. Then you can never have A better than B and B better than A. Okay, so complete says you always have one or the other. Strict says you never have both. And finally, transitive says if you have A's better than B and B's better than C, then you have to have that A is also better than C. This is so sort of intuitive that it might be like surprising that I'm even mentioning it. But if we don't insist on these sort of properties, then it becomes much harder to analyze voting systems. Okay, so transitive means if you think A is better than B and B is better than C, then you also have to think that A is better than C. And finally, we say that the relation is a strict total order if it's complete, strict, and transitive. So if it's all of these things. Okay. Why do I define this abstract thing? I do it because I want to say that a rational voter is a voter whose voter preference relation is a strict total order. So remember, a voter preference relation is the thing that looks like this. It tells you how, in particular, voter VI feels about the alternatives. It tells you voter VI's preferences. And I'm going to insist that every voter has a strict total order for their voter preference relation. Okay, so what does this mean, like qualitatively? What does this mean? Well, it means a few things. It means, for one thing, a rational voter, and rational again, it's just the word which I used in this definition. It's not supposed to pass any sort of moral or ethical judgment on what a rational person should be. It's just the word I used in this definition. So a rational voter can compare any two alternatives. Okay, so no matter how many alternatives there are, if you give me any two of them, if I was a rational voter, I'd always be able to tell you that I like one more than the other one. Okay, a rational voter never likes two alternatives equally. Okay, there's never going to be a draw. A rational voter always has one which they like more than another one. And finally, they never have preference cycles. And what I mean by that is you never get situations like A is preferred over B, is preferred over C, is preferred over A. This never happens. Okay, you can't have these sort of cycles, and they're called cycles because you can imagine redrawing them as a cycle. You could imagine redrawing them like A is preferred over B, is preferred over C, is preferred over C, preferred over A. So you get this like cycle thing going on. Okay, well, a rational voter would never have these sort of cycles. Okay, and these assumptions are the assumptions under which we'll be working for the remainder of the course. Okay, that's the end of this video.